Good evening and welcome to this pre-election event for prospective candidates standing in the first Bexhill-on-Sea Parish Council elections being held on Thursday the 6th of May 2021. As you are all no doubt aware, following a community governance review of Bexhill-on-Sea held in 2020, Rother District Council has established a parish council for Bexhill-on-Sea, which will come into being on the 1st of April 2021, and it needs 18 councillors, fortunately more than we've got here tonight. My name's Malcolm Johnston. I'm the Chief Executive of Rother District Council. This event is being held remotely and is being live streamed via YouTube, and the recording of it will be available afterwards on our website. To ensure the smooth running of this event, all participants are kindly requested to put their mobile phones on silent if they have one near them, and to keep their microphones and cameras off. I'm absolutely confident I won't need this, but in the event of any disruption to the proceedings, I will do my best Jackie Weaver impression and move people from the meeting. A copy of the programme has been sent to all participants and is available online if you're watching via YouTube. Presenters are asked to leave their cameras on and mute their microphones when not speaking. Joining us today are Councillor Pauline Stott from Exmouth Town Council, Councillor David Amptill from Rye Town Council, Trevor Lego, CEO of SELC, Sussex Association of Local Councils, Linda Butcher, the Interim Parish Council Administrator for Bexhill Parish Council, and Richard Adams, the Election Manager for Rother District Council. Just to explain the course of the evening, presenters will be asked to give their presentations, following which there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end when all presenters have spoken. This will hopefully ensure we can stick to the time frame. If you have got a question, there is a chat facility available on Teams, so please indicate in the chat facility. You can try and wave at me, but there's no guarantee I will see you, so please try the chat facility. So I will, having sort of, well, just to take you through the programme before I go on that, I've introduced most of the people that will be taking part tonight. The other one who will be summing up at the end, who is with us, is Councillor Christine Bayliss. Councillor Bayliss chaired the steering group that led this process through the council, and I will ask Councillor Bayliss at the end of the meeting just to say a few words. But without further ado, I'll now hand over to Councillor Pauline Stott. Pauline.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a little bit about myself. I've been a councillor for 22 years, and I'm also an honorary alderman for East Devon District Council, and I was there for 20 years and 18 for Exmouth. Exmouth Town lost its town council, same as what you did in 1974, but we fought to get it back again in 1996. We are a political council with Lib Dems, Independents, Greens and Conservatives. At the moment the Lib Dems hold power, and over the years it's been held by both people. There are 25 councillors, we have 9 staff plus 4 maintenance people. We have a population of 38,000. So what do? We hold a festival every year for 4 days, plus we do a Christmas cracker. The neighbourhood plan was one of the most important things that we did, where you get 25% of the SIL money, which I don't expect, well, some of you will know what it's about, instead of the 15%. We've also taken from the district council the festoon lights, the clock tower. We're about to take the maintenance of the grass maintenance, and also we're looking at projects for climate change, including installing water fountains along our 2 miles of beach. We have a beach wheelchair for the disabled project, and we're also looking at taking on CTV now from the district council. So we're quite an active council. We have about 20 different working parties as well, but it's very rewarding for those that want to take it on. So, thank you. Sorry, I can't hear. Oh, hold on, mute me.
No, sorry, that's me. That's another pound in the mute pot for me for failing to unmute. Thank you for that, Councillor. just to bring on board that somebody with experience of both district councils and parish councils, and also at the regional level is Councillor David Amptill. Then, so can I pass over to you, if I may, Councillor Lord Amptill?
Thank you very much. Am I unmuted now on the mighty machine?
You are, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I got involved in council work, knowing that there was such a thing I could get involved in when I was living and working in East Grinstead in 1998. I was involved in a little bit of political work there and campaigning. I tapped my ankles and said, "Wouldn't you like to be a candidate for the local elections in 1999? 6 months later, after all the sort of work which you're all familiar with, at 3 a.m. on an early May morning, I found myself a member of Mid Sussex District Council. Got a few hours sleep, and then later that morning found myself a member of East Grinstead Town Council. Not really knowing what councils get up to, but willing to learn and willing to work with colleagues and find out how it all happened. There, immediately afterwards, I got a call saying, would I report to Turners Hill on the Saturday morning, because the group of which I was going to be a member had a small majority and were going to form the administration of the next council. And the senior wranglers amongst us began to guide everybody. There were clear candidates for chairman and leader of the council, things like that. And I got a tap on the shoulder and said, we want you to be deputy chairman of the North Area Planning Committee because we want you to learn about planning. By the way, on Monday morning, there's a meeting with the planning officer, and he will guide the chairman of the committee and your good self through it all. And the next day, there is a meeting in Turners Hill where you've got 35 planning applications to decide on. Crikey, it was just as well that the chairman turned up both the briefing and the meeting, because I wouldn't have had a clue what to do. But planning was the main thing that I concentrated on for the next year. Year after that, I somehow was scrambled to be chairman of that committee. And on the second meeting of it, made an almighty cock-up. There was a vote which was tied, and I had to give a ruling on whether what seemed like a good idea, an empty ramshackle barn in the middle of absolutely nowhere, beautiful countryside, should be turned into a country house. And I gave my casting vote to say yes, which was way outside the local plan and all things like that, which I really didn't know much about. The officer in charge of the meeting, guiding us through it all, very nearly exploded and rushed the telephone afterwards, and I knew I was in for trouble the next day. So I called the chief planning officer and I said, I know I made a mistake. I voted for something which was absolutely outside council policy. I realized I did wrong. And he said, the very fact that you rang up and acknowledged that means I have no worries at all. You won't do that again. You'll make other mistakes, but you won't make that one. Anyway, so that was a happy interlude which I struggled through. And then third year of that council, after the Local Government Act 2000, the cabinet system had come in, and I was asked to take the smallest portfolio of that, which was sort of community affairs. It covered housing, environmental health, and relations with the voluntary sector. So I thoroughly enjoyed that experience throughout. But it was also fun being on East Grinstead Town Council. I'm mentioning all this because it's remote from Rother, and Rother is similar in very many ways, and Rye Town Council is similar in very many ways. But the town council there was quite political, and one of the bits of advice I would give to anybody seeking to be a member of this excellent new council, which is forthcoming, is not to be too political about it. A town council, a parish council, won't have anything like the budget that the statutory authorities will, and so can't do as much, but will have plenty of opportunities to persuade and guide, having perhaps greater knowledge of very local affairs than the wider district and the wider county council. So subsequently, I've been a member of Rye Town Council for most of the time since 2003, and was lucky enough to become a member of Rother in 2007. I might say this very week, Rye Town Council has suffered a coordinated Zoom bombing attack. Some 20 people tried to disrupt the meeting. The town clerk had to move quite quickly to do something about that. It's something which I know that everybody wants to be more and more public about the meetings which we take part in. But I think it's a difficult time at the moment, and one needs to be a little bit careful about that. But let's hope that people will be cooperative. Why stand? There's plenty of good comradeship available, opportunities for excellent training. It's something which Rother has done particularly well. And to Trevor, who's going to talk in a minute, will tell you all about what the 3 counties training group of Surrey and Sussex Association of Local Councils can do. And there's very little that local councils can't do. The only restriction really is money, is the funding to do things. But they are able to borrow in a way which Trevor will no doubt explain. I've probably gone on for far too long. You have to be careful, I dare say, about budgets. In the new financial year, I know that Rother expects to have net expenditure of over 16 million, whereas Rye Town Council is proposing a precept of 173,000. Stands to reason that there is rather less which a town council can do, but it really can help its neighbourhood, guide the senior authorities into what they can do to make themselves useful. So I think that's really all I should say at the moment. Perhaps there'll be other things to discuss a bit later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Well, having segued us nicely towards Trevor, I don't think I need to give any other introduction. So if I could hand over, that's looking a bit at what councillors have found. I think it's useful as well to get a perspective from officers. So if I can hand over to Trevor Lego, if I may. Trevor.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, as explained, I'm Chief Executive of SSALC, which is the body that provides the support to all the town and parish councils across Surrey, East Sussex and West Sussex. And tonight I'm going to focus on East Sussex for obvious reasons. ESALC, East Sussex Association of Local Councils, is there to provide the support to the 102, shortly to be 103, member councils that we have in across the county. And support in that sense is legal, financial, human resources, governance and procedural advice. Now, each council pays a subscription to belong to us. We don't take any money from principal authorities. We're totally independent, but we are there as a sort of a quasi local government body in that sense. We are affiliated to the National Association of Local Councils. And for those of you familiar with principal authorities, larger councils, that is our equivalent of the Local Government Association. And NALC, as it's known, is that exists to engage with government on behalf of the sector and to interpret legislation for the benefit of the sector. So we've got the County Association, which fits in to our National Association. We are one of 41 county associations that across the country. And every Wednesday morning, I have a Zoom call with the Chief Exec of the National Association and my colleagues all around the country, sharing thoughts and ideas and issues that we've encountered. At the other end of the hierarchy, we have RALC. Some of you will have heard of RALC, Rother Association of Local Councils, a body to which all the towns and parishes in Rother are encouraged to participate in. And that meets to discuss matters of common interest and common concern. And Bexhill Town Council would be a member of RALC and play its part in that structure. Another function of the Rother Association is to appoint 3 representatives to serve as directors on the ESALT board. And currently we have Councillor John Barnes from Etchingham, Councillor Philip Allard from Iden, and Councillor Peter Turner from Icklesham Parish Council. They serve as board directors, along with 3 from the Lewis district and 3 from the Wealden district, so a total of 9 directors that I'm accountable to on the East Sussex board. We offer appropriate training. David mentioned about the 3 county training courses, and in this case there are going to be a number of new councillors who will benefit from our new councillor training that we offer, and we offer specific training, planning, finance, etc., whatever is appropriate, and they are published. And we encourage our member councils to be as adventurous as they might wish to be, and use the powers that Parliament has granted them to do things for the benefit of their communities. Now, subject to a council having a qualified clerk, and subject to that council having 2/3 of its councillors who stood for election at the last ordinary election, the council can adopt something called the general power of competence, which means that that council can do absolutely anything it wants, provided there isn't a law that says it can't, if that makes sense. And it can do things for which it has no express power by statute. So Power of General Competence, PGC, is a very, very useful tool, and one would expect Bexhill Town Council to appoint a clerk who is so qualified that it can exercise that, because really, really valuable to have. David Amptill also mentioned borrowing. If a council wants to embark on a capital project that it may well be well beyond its 1-year expenditure plan, it can plan to do so over the next, say, 20, 30, even up to 50 years. And it's a bit like a domestic mortgage. But in order to secure the money, we have to submit an application for borrowing approval to the Secretary of State and jump through a few hoops there. And then you'll get a borrowing approval letter, and you can go to the Public Works Loans Board and borrow the money at a fixed rate of interest for the whole of the term. Now, so it's currently about 2%. So in 28 years' time, it would still be 2%, even though prevailing interest rates might be 15% by then. So borrowing approval is something to really seriously consider for the benefit of your residents if you're looking to undertake a serious capital scheme, because what it does mean is that successive residents in Bexhill, or house owners, will be paying off that debt. It won't all fall on those who live here currently. So on the basis that people may move house every 8 or 10 years, that will pass on to future owners. I've galloped through a few things there, Malcolm. I think what I'll pause there, if I may, and if there are any questions, I'll pick them up, but we'll move on from this one if you're happy with that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Trevor. That's useful to give a feel for it. We've been fortunate in setting up this council to been able to secure the services of Linda Butcher, who's some experience in this and in doing it in other areas. So I thought it'd be useful. We thought it'd be useful tonight just to ask Linda to say a few words. Linda's been a town clerk in other areas. I think you're officially the interim parish council administrator here, but in effect the interim town clerk until a permanent post is appointed. So if I can hand over to you, Linda, please.
Yes, certainly. You're right, Malcolm. I've been a town clerk for 30 odd years. And Bexhill is actually the third council that I have been involved in setting up. Because when I retired in 2010, I did lots of locum works and things, but also I set up Andover Town Council and Queen's Park Community Council, which is the first council in London. So yes, I'm experienced. I'm looking forward to doing Bexhill. And I've already started it, obviously, because I used to live in Bexhill. So I'm quite enthusiastic about this one particularly. But this probably will be my last one. Role of clerk and responsible finance officer, because it's normally a joint post, and it will be, I think, to start with until the council has more duties and things that it's going to do, will be advertised obviously after the new council comes into force. The election is the 6th of May. Fingers crossed that's all going to happen, and it looks as if it's going to be. And I'm planning that the annual statutory meeting will hopefully be on the 19th of May, when the new council will decide on its chairman of the council, any committees that it wants, and setting up working parties and all sorts of different things. It will also decide at that meeting whether or not it's going to call itself a town council, because when it is set up, it is actually a statute that actually says it has to be a parish council in the first place, but it can then choose to be a town council, in which case then the chairman, who is appointed first off, the very first item on the agenda, would actually become the town mayor. So all interesting things. The role of the town clerk is to issue all statutory notices to ensure that any decisions that the council makes are lawful, and that those lawful decisions get carried out and not just left in the minutes with nothing happening to them. The town clerk will be responsible for looking after any other personnel that the council may wish to appoint, and also any other resources. The agendas and reports, which are very, very important for a parish town council, have to contain all the information to make sure that the members are fully informed before they make a decision about anything, because we don't want silly mistakes happening. They all need to be aware of all of the facts before it goes to a council or committee meeting. The clerk will then do the minutes and publish those minutes so that all the people in Bexhill will know exactly what you're doing. And if by that time, hopefully we'll be back to having face-to-face meetings, then of course they can come to your meetings and have a look at what's going on and what's being discussed. An item on every agenda will be public participation. That's a normal thing that happens with parish and town councils now. And normally 10 to 15 minutes is set aside for members of the public to ask questions of the council. The clerk will also respond to the day-to-day correspondence that comes in and can answer any queries that there are, providing it's in line with the council's policies, can answer those. It doesn't mean that every single letter that comes in has to be put before council members. Their role is actually to make the decisions for the officers of the council to carry out those decisions. The clerk will also work with the local community and businesses and other statutory tiers of local authority and neighbouring parish and town councils as well, so that there is a general good working relationship between the various tiers. In our particular case, it will be Rother District Council and East Sussex County Council, but also neighbouring parish and town councils. The clerk will monitor any council policies to ensure that they meet with current legislation. So it's quite a big role. It's an interesting role, and one that I have certainly enjoyed for, as I say, over 30 years. One of the things that you often hear people say is parish councils, town councils, they don't have any powers, so what can they do? They're a waste of money. We just have to pay for them and they can't do anything. Well, actually, Trevor's already told you about one particular power, and if you have that power, then you can do virtually anything. providing you've got a qualified clerk there that can do it. I could actually give the new town council that because I'm a qualified clerk. But we won't go there because I'm not looking for a job. Having said that, I've got a list here of, and it goes into 3.5 pages of A4 paper, which actually lists out all the powers and duties that a parish and town council can actually do. And it goes from allotments, which, as you probably know, are already being transferred from Rother District Council, through to burial grounds and cemeteries, bus shelters, Christmas lights, giving grants to people like CABs, looking after clocks, closed churchyards, conference facilities, community centres, crime prevention, entertainment, gifts, various things on the highways. There's a whole list of things you can fund on the highways and deal with, providing you work obviously with East Sussex County Council. Land, litter, newsletters, open spaces, public buildings, public conveniences, parks, pleasure grounds, recreation, town and country planning, because the new town council will be able to ask Rother District Council to notify them of all planning applications that come in, and they can consider them and pass their comments back. Tourism, traffic calming, transport, village signs, war memorials. The list is endless, believe me. Parish councils have enormous powers, and one of the biggest powers they have is actually to raise a precept. And when they go through the stage of looking at budgets and sorting out what their budget needs to be and what their precept is, which they then pass on to Rother District Council to collect it for them, but not actually to be able to say, no, you can't have that amount of money. If the town council asks for it, it is the district council's responsibility to collect it for them. I'll stop there, I think. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Linda. Well, I can't comment on whether this is your last job, but hopefully it will be your last one for Rother, I suspect. That bit I can probably fairly confidently predict. But other than that, I'm sure Trevor will keep you in mind, and when something else happens into the future. Thanks very much, Linda. That was great. I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about sort of how it all fits together. So what we will end up with in Bexhill is what we'll call a 3-tier area, which is the county council, the district council, and the parish council. And thank you, Linda, for explaining, because sometimes at this stage you will see a lot of stuff that talks about Bexhill-on-Sea Parish Council, and that's because legally that is the body, as Linda said, that we are setting up. At its first meeting, I would expect after electing a chairman, of course, and that the formalities of that, one of the early items on the agenda will be a decision to style itself as Bexhill-on-Sea Town Council, which it is perfectly entitled to do. And I would not prejudging anything, but would be quite astonished if that wasn't the case, that they did that. The 3-tier system is a bit of a misnomer, because a 3-tier system infers there's some degree of hierarchy and oversight, and there isn't. We need to be absolutely clear that when the town council is set up, it will be a sovereign body in its own right that will make its own decisions. The extent of Rother's involvement will be, and again, as Linda said, you will tell us what your precept is every year. We will collect that precept for you. We can't control what that precept is. We have no power over limiting it in any way. You tell us what it is. We add it into the equation and collect it. We will also run elections on your behalf. I'm the returning officer for the council, and will be the returning officer, and am the returning officer for town and parish councils as well. So we will run elections on your behalf. And if we do get into the stage of the naughty councillor bit, we have the standards regime, which Lisa Cooper, who's with us tonight, is our monitoring officer, and we do have an involvement in that side of things. I'm sure for Bexhill that will never be required, so we'll move swiftly on from that. There is no obligation on you to work with other tiers, but you can choose to work with other tiers. Some parish councils do their own thing in some areas. in other areas, it's worth having a discussion with the other tiers, because you may be able to enhance or add value to what those tiers are doing. But I would stress again, that is the decision of the Town Council. It is not a decision for Rother District Council. It's entirely a decision for the Town Council. We have, I feel that we have anyway, across Rother, a very good relationship generally with our towns and parishes. That's not to say that we don't have the odd little disagreement over issues, but we work well, and the towns and parishes work well. Trevor referred to RALC, the Rother Association of Local Councils. The parishes have worked well. A good example recently has been speeding initiatives through villages, where you can buy a piece of kit that's actually quite expensive. So what some parishes are doing is looking at sharing this sort of thing, moving it around so that they can get the benefit from it. You will have all those opportunities, or all those opportunities will exist for the Town Council. But I don't want to take up too much of your time, because really this is an issue for when the Town Council first meets. As things develop, it needs to establish its own relationship with the other tiers, so with both the district at the local level and the county at the slightly wider level. People often say to me, we don't know what the difference between county and district and maybe even parishes are. And I think that's something that as the Town Council comes in, it can show some of that difference. The only slight word of caution, as I would put to it, and this will happen, is for most people it doesn't matter, because Rother collects their council tax, so it's our fault. So that's an advantage for the Town Council. But also they say, I pay my council tax, I just want to get it done. I'm not bothered about who does it. So I think although it's not a requirement that we work together, I think there's a very high expectation from our public that they pay council tax, it gets distributed among the rest of us. They really don't care about that distribution. They just want to see things done. So I will look forward to a fruitful working relationship with Bexhill Town Council when it's formed. I believe we will have a fruitful working relationship. There's an awful lot to talk about. Our style in dealing with issues with the parishes, if we're talking about it, has been to deal through negotiation, to deal through discussion. I see no reason to not continue that when the Town Council's formed. It will take a little while for people to get their feet under the table, so to speak. It will take a little while for the Town Council to establish its own identity. But the important bit is that it needs to establish that identity, and then it needs to go out and talk to others about how it can enhance, how it can add to the experiences, the lifestyle, whatever, of Bexhill residents. So probably the bit that a lot of people will be interested in is, well, okay, we're here without one, there's going to be one, what happens in the intervening period? Richard Adams, who's my electoral services manager, is here tonight. I have to say, these elections, we've not been sure whether they've actually been happening or what's been going on. The mood music is they are going to happen, so we are working on that basis. But what I'll do, Richard, if I may, is just let you talk a bit about the election process.
Thanks, Malcolm. I've actually got a short presentation here that I was hoping to include. So I'm just going to try and share my screen with everybody, and I hope you'll perhaps someone can tell me if they can't see. If we can't see the presentation, hopefully you can all see my screen.
I can see it, Richard, so it's on there now.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so as Malcolm said, whereas everyone else here is talking about the council when it comes into formation, I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about the process of people getting elected. So I've got a couple of areas to run through here. A sort of a brief look at the timetable, the electoral area, a discussion of the qualifications for stand-in and the nomination process, campaigning, and then the poll itself. I will say that we are actually holding another event which some of you may be aware of, which is taking place next week, and it's on Thursday the 4th of March at 2 p.m. and I will give you some contact details at the end of this, where we will be going into more detail on all of this. So if you do have any questions, of course, feel free to ask me now, but we will have another event later on, which will get into the more technical details. So as Malcolm mentioned, he will be the returning officer for these elections. Malcolm also has the role of the electoral registration officer, and that's quite common that someone at the district council will often have the same role. And the difference between the two is the returning officer has responsibility for the elections, and the electoral registration officer is for maintaining the register of electors. So just briefly, you may be aware of this already, but the electoral area we're talking about, Bexhill-on-Sea Parish, it will be subdivided into 9 parish wards, and you can see the parish wards listed on the screen there. And it's worth noting that the areas of those parish wards are the same as the district wards, which I have to say I'm immensely grateful for, because it makes my job a lot easier. So there will be 2 seats in each ward up for election, and that will give the parish council a total of 18 seats. Now, I'm just going to touch on a couple of the dates for the timetable. Again, I will go through this in a lot more detail next week, but the date that really kicks everything off is Monday the 29th of March, and that's when we publish the notice of election. And that's quite an important document, because that contains all the information on things like where nomination papers have to be delivered to. It gives various timings, and we will publish this on the Rother website and also at the front of the town hall. Nominations for candidates will then begin a day later on Tuesday the 30th of March, and will run until 4 p.m. on Thursday the 8th of April. Now, we'll talk about nominations in just a moment, but again, it's very important that if you are going to stand as a candidate, that you take a look at the notice of election so that you can see where the nomination paper has to be delivered to and at what times it can be delivered. I should also note as well that the parish council isn't the only election that we'll have on Thursday, the 6th of May. We're also going to have police and crime commissioner elections and East Sussex County Council elections. The next thing to just highlight, we published a statement of persons nominated. That's really a fancy way of saying a list of candidates, and that will be on Friday, the 9th of April. So that's the day where you can find out who has been validly nominated. Polling day will be 6th of May. And then the bottom one, important one for everyone to remember, if you do stand as a candidate, is you have to complete a return of your election expenses. Now, I'll come to that a bit later, and that has to be returned within 28 days of the election result. Just a brief bit here. Obviously, this is going to be a bit of a unique election because of COVID. So there's going to be a lot of extra information and a lot of extra precautions that we'll be taking at these elections to try and make them as safe as possible. And you can see on screen just some of the things that we'll be encouraging everyone to bear in mind if you're standing as a candidate and taking part in any of the events. It's the usual things that we're all familiar with at the moment in terms of maintaining social distancing, cleaning hands, wearing a face covering, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a bit wordy, and I apologise for that. I hope you can see this all okay. This is the qualifications for standing as a candidate. Now, again, if you do have any concerns about this, we will discuss this in more detail in next week. But essentially, if someone wants to stand as a candidate, the qualification is that they must be at least 18 years of age and be either a British qualifying Commonwealth citizen or national of an EU member state. Now, in addition to that, they then have to fit at least one of 4 qualifications, which are listed below. These are being a registered local government elector for the parish area, having occupied as owner or tenant any land or premises in the parish area for the whole 12 months preceding nomination, having their principal or only place of work during the last 12 months in the parish area, or have lived in the parish area during the last 12 months. And I would stress you do not need to meet all 4 of those qualifications. So don't worry if you don't. It has to be any one of those. And I'll talk about that more at a later date. There are some disqualifications as well. A person cannot be a candidate if they are employed by the parish council or hold a paid office under the authority, or if they are subject of a bankruptcy restrictions order or an interim restrictions order, or have been sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 3 months or more. And then the final one is if they've served a disqualification due to having been found guilty of a corrupt or illegal practice by an election court. Now, there are a lot of ifs and buts and caveats to all of this. There is some very useful guidance I'm going to mention at the end of this this presentation that I would encourage you to read. But that's broadly the qualifications and disqualifications. So if you want to stand as a candidate, you need to submit nomination papers. There are 3 nomination papers that everybody will need to submit. There is a nomination form, a home address form, and a consent to nomination. Now, these are official prescribed forms. They're available on the Electoral Commission website, and you can see the Electoral Commission logo in the top right. The reason I have that on here is this presentation is based on guidance from the Electoral Commission. These forms are available on the website, and we're also able to provide copies of these to you, and we can start to provide these from next week at the briefing. If you're going to stand as a party candidate, there are 2 additional forms that you would also need to submit. One is a certificate authorising the use of a party name or registered description on the ballot paper, and the second is a written request to use one of the party's emblems on the ballot paper. Now, that second one is optional, but it's worth reading the guidance on this again if you intend to stand as a party candidate. Couple of key points I would make is to make sure that you take care when you complete your nomination papers. Any mistakes could invalidate the nomination. If there are any mistakes, if when the paper comes into us, if it's not submitted in time for us to make you aware of those mistakes, it could invalidate it and mean that you can't stand. So it's really important that you get it correct. We'd encourage you to complete nomination papers early, and what we can actually do in the elections office is provide an informal check. We can't tell you what to put on your paper, but we can advise whether the paper has everything that is required in order to be validly nominated, and we'd encourage you to do that at the earliest opportunity, and I will talk a bit about that later on as well. Another important point is that the nomination form, home address form, and the consent to nomination must be delivered by hand. They can't be submitted by post, fax, email, or other electronic means. Now, at the moment, because of COVID, the ability to hand things in person is going to be complicated. We have got some procedures in place to allow us to receive nomination forms in person, and again, I will cover that in more depth next week. The nomination form that you submit will need to include 2 signatures of supporters, people that are supporting your candidacy. And there's a few bits of information here. I won't go into too much detail. I'm just saying what you need to do. You've got to make sure that they sign and print their own names. There's a lot of rules about making sure that they're aware what they're signing effectively. There's also some data protection requirements to be aware of, and again, the guidance does go into more detail on this, so I won't go into that too much now. I just wanted to briefly mention campaigning as well, again, because this is quite a difficult circumstances under which the election is taking place. It's worth mentioning that the UK government have advised that the current national lockdown restrictions do not support door-to-door campaigning or leafleting. So if you are intending to distribute any leaflets to members of the public, you would currently need to do that by post. You're not able to deliver door-to-door or in person. This is because campaigning currently is not considered an essential or necessary activity. It's possible this may change before the election, but at present this is the position. And we would encourage you to check the latest government guidelines to see what the position is as we move forward in the election timetable. Now, a couple of do's and don'ts just to bear in mind. This is something at any election, not just this one. The first one is really important. It says do use an imprint on all campaign material. Now, what I mean by an imprint is there's some, perhaps the best way to describe it is some official wording that you need to include on any campaign materials that you produce, which describes, basically says who printed that material, who promoted it, and on behalf of whom. So if you employ a printer to produce some materials for you, you have to give their name and address. If you have someone promoting your candidacy, you have to give their name and address, and then obviously yourself as candidate. There's all sorts of rules about what does and doesn't class as an imprint and what needs to go on. And I think it's probably too much depth to go into now, but I would just like to highlight that that's really important that you get that part right. And then there's a few other things to bear in mind. If you do put any advertising materials up, you need to make sure that you comply with local planning rules, that any posters that go up are removed 2 weeks after the election. It's also important that you don't produce any material that looks like a poll card, so as not to confuse the electors. And it's also finally important that you don't pay people to display your adverts unless they display adverts as part of their normal business. Now, polling day itself, Thursday, the 6th of May, as I mentioned earlier, we do have arrangements in place to ensure that our polling stations are safe places to vote. Most of the measures that we will be having in place will be familiar to us all at the moment. I think if you've gone into any public places such as shops and banks, you'll know the kind of thing. It's examples such as the requirement to wear a face covering, floor markings to ensure social distancing, and the provision of hand sanitizer on entry and exit. So we're going to do everything we can to make it safe, even down to things such as encouraging people to bring their own pen or pencil with them to vote. Polling stations on polling day will be open from 7 AM until 10 PM. We do encourage voters to check their poll cards before polling day, particularly at this election, because it's possible that some of their polling stations may have changed. Postal votes as well. We expect a lot of people will vote by post at this election for obvious reasons. And if for any reason someone actually applies for a postal vote but then can't post it in time, they can still hand that in to the polling station. And again, there's more information on this available elsewhere. Next, we have the actual counting of votes. As with polling, we're going to do everything we can to make the counting as safe as possible. It is likely to take longer than usual because we have to ensure we have social distancing in place, and that's going to mean we have less staff available to actually do the counting. So I would just ask anyone to bear that in mind. The counting for the parish is actually going to take place on Sunday, the 9th of May. Now, as I mentioned before, we have 3 main elections taking place in May, so we're going to be counting over 3 separate days, and the parish election, the count will be Sunday the 9th of May. All the counting will take place at the Delaware Pavilion in Bexhill. The count centre will be open to candidates and agents from 8:45 on the day. We will send invites out to all the candidates in advance, and as you can see on the screen, there is rules that allow you to bring a counting agent and one other person as a guest. I will say that we will have some additional rules in place at this election because of COVID, so just bear that in mind. And finally, I just wanted to mention that anyone who is attending the count will be required to wear a face covering for the duration of the event and adhere to safety restrictions. Now, I'm just going to very briefly mention spending, and this is because this is something that we can talk about a bit more next week. Each candidate that stands, there is a limit on the amount that you can spend as a candidate, and you can see there on the screen that limit is £806 plus 7p per elector in the parish area. This is the responsibility of the candidate, as it says in the middle, to ensure that you keep track of your spending. I mentioned earlier that you have to complete a spending return. That's due 28 calendar days after the result. The return can be made public by the returning officer, and it's possible that samples of returns may be reviewed by the Electoral Commission. And very important, as it does mention, failure to submit a spending return is a criminal offence. And finally, of course, no spending will be reimbursed. So if you stand as a candidate, if you do spend any money, then you need to be aware that's your own money that you're spending. You aren't reimbursed at a later date. I'm just going to provide a few bits of contact information for you. Some telephone numbers and email addresses here for you. If you want to contact either me or my team, you can contact us by telephone on 01424 787 000. That will take you through to our main Rother phone line, and if you then ask for the electoral services team, they will put you through to us. Or you can email us directly at elections@rother.gov.uk. You could also find out information on our elections page on our website. I'm quite happy if you've got any questions after this briefing. If you want to drop me an email or speak on the phone, feel free to do so, or we can talk about it next week. You can also contact the Electoral Commission if you have any questions, and their details are also on the screen there. And then finally, as I've mentioned several times, we have the event next week, 2 p.m, Thursday the 4th of March. And if you would like to come along to that event, which is going to be conducted online, much like this event, please drop us an email. And if you ask us for an invite, I'll be happy to send one through to you. OK, that's it for me. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Richard. I'll just let you stop sharing your screen.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I mean, I think that's a very useful run through. As Richard has sort of indicated, the sort of rules around this election are very much up in the air, because it depends on which stage in the roadmap we are at the time that it happens, as the way things happen. Our main bit is obviously to make sure that nobody is disenfranchised and everybody gets their right to vote. Trevor has rightly pointed out that the government at the minute are allowing emergency proxy voting for those if you find yourself diagnosed or a positive test the day of the election. What I would advise anybody to do is just check the latest information on what's happening, because it is a little bit, well, I've certainly in 30 odd years in local government never quite run an election under these circumstances. And to be quite honest, won't be upset if I never run another one under these circumstances, but it's quite challenging. We have to produce a risk assessment for every election, and I think it's fair to say that that if it was anything else other than an election we have to hold, given what's in our risk assessment, we wouldn't do it at this point in time. But we have to do it, and we will make it happen, and we will work with people to do that. I think just one point that's been highlighted, and again, Trevor's put something in the chat. I mean, I don't think anybody is going into this for the money, but if you are, the hourly rate is awful. Just to be absolutely clear about it, the hourly rate is, I'm trying to avoid using something of common vernacular, but it is awful. Most towns and parishes, most of them don't provide allowances. Potential exception around the chairman in perhaps the bigger ones, but that is again a decision for the town or parish council. But I think I can speak for all of our councillors on Rother District Council, even when they do receive an allowance. If you put the number of hours they put in for what they get, minimum wage doesn't even come into it. So this is about doing something because you actually want to make a difference in your town or parish, and I think you have the ability to make a difference in the town or parish. I think we've reached the point where we can take some questions, and there have been some coming through on the chat, and maybe what we can try and do for those who either haven't got access to it or see it is collate those after the event, so that we can at least get them on our website or get them out to people. But if anybody wants to ask a question, if you're familiar with Teams, there's a little hand that you can put up. And if you put your hand up, I will come to you in order. I will take people in strict order. Tonight isn't your only option. Richard's given you the opportunity to go. It's given his contact details. If there are general questions, I'm very happy if questions are directed to me. And if anybody wants my email address, it's fairly publicly available, but it's malcolm.johnston@rother.gov.uk. Can I just say the Malcolm is spelled Malcolm and the Johnston is spelled with a T. So Johnston, but you're very welcome to email me. I can pass your any queries you have on to the relevant person. But I think the important thing tonight is to start a discussion. We may not answer everything tonight, but I think it was the start of a discussion. And if you have a question, please do drop me an email, and we will get the answer back to you. So we've got about sort of half an hour or so, a bit longer for questions. So I'm. Does anybody want to fire off with a question? If you do ask a question, can I ask that you turn your camera on, obviously your microphone on. That helps greatly if you have, and then I will come to people in the order they appear in my screen. This could be a very boring half an hour, by the way, if nobody's prepared to ask any questions. We've had just as a way of introduction, we've had a couple of questions around people who are twin hatters, if you like, who can district councillors stand for town council in the same way that district councillors can stand for county council. Yes, of course they can. There will inevitably be some overlap in it, but I would seriously hope that that we do get enough people who are interested in their ward that they will come forward and stand for election. If we don't get enough candidates, which I have absolutely no doubt in this case we will, I have the power to co-opt people onto the parish council. It's one I'd prefer not to use. All the parish council needs to do is to be quorate, and Trevor will tell me, but generally quorate is somewhere around a third or a quarter of the number. So as long as we get something like, my maths is being tested to, but about, if we can get into the mid sort of single digits, we're probably okay. High single digits, we're okay. And I'm fairly confident on that. But we will make this happen, whichever way it goes. I can't believe, knowing some of the people that I know on this forum, that nobody's got a question. Jimmy, no, is the answer. Jimmy's asked, are there any financial payments, deposits for candidates standing for election? In local elections, Richard, no, there's not, is there? If you stand for parliamentary or for some of the other elections, yes, there are. But in local elections, no, there's not. I've got Councillor Richard Thomas. Richard.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Malcolm. Can I just ask two questions? The first one is, could Linda Butcher please provide us all with that wonderful list of all the different things a town council can do? I'm really looking forward to getting that. That would be totally brilliant. And secondly, I was interested in what she had to say about how the chair of the council would also function as the mayor, because they're quite different functions in Rother. And we looked at slightly different qualities, I think, in our mayor, in our chair of council. Is it possible to separate these two functions, please?
No, I was asked that question actually by one of the groups I spoke to last week. No, it is not possible. I think you'll find, because Bexhill has a chairman of Rother District Council, but it has charter trustees that appoints the mayor, two totally different organisations. When you have a parish or town council, the chairman of the council is automatically the town mayor if it is a town council, and it can't be separated. It is the same person. So therefore you need to choose somebody who is not only good at chairing meetings, but can also afford the time to actually do the civic responsibilities.
And it's completely impossible, even if the town council strongly wants to separate the two, it would not be legal for the two to be separated then.
No, it will not be legal. No.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Just to expand on that, Richard, we separate it because the chairman is the chairman of Rother District Council. The mayor is actually elected through the Charter Trustees, which is a separate organisation. Sorry, I'm conscious that Councillor Stott wanted to speak. Pauline.
Well, I was going to say about the mayor. We have a mayor in Exmouth and he's the chairman. The district council has a chairman and a vice chairman. And that's how it's worked. And the mayor is a very, very busy person because you get everybody wants their shops open, their babies tapped on the head and all sorts of things. So it's a very, very busy role. And I was vice chairman of East Devon and that was busy just in itself. But the question I wanted to ask was to Richard Adams. Richard, you didn't mention anything about social media on your little presentation, like Facebook, because we have a lot of problems with people on Facebook at the moment. We've got two now who want to be elected and they're putting on their things and there isn't anything on there, just their faces. And, you know, it's just interesting. People can fall foul of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting area. I think this is something that's actually been in the news over the last couple of years because social media obviously is relatively new and electoral law is fairly arcane in all honesty. I think the Electoral Commission's general position is that candidates should make clear that they're standing as a candidate. I don't believe there's any legal requirement that they have to put any imprint as such on any social media posts, but they do have to make aware that they're standing as a candidate. And I suspect this is something that the law will probably change in the next few years. I think there's just a lot of discussions going on as to quite how it should change. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if I may be honest, Pauline, I think from the Electoral Commission's point of view, it falls into the far too difficult to actually think about and deal with category. Because if you were to put the imprint on every tweet you put out, there wouldn't be much space left for any message. So it's but it's one of the things that we do keep asking for formal guidance. And we keep being told it's coming, but it never really quite comes. So, but it's a fair point. I think the main bit is for people to make it clear on their social media profile is that they are standing as a candidate for the election. And then we sit back and just wait for the barrage of complaints we might get, depending on what's happening at that point in time. Trevor, you wanted to make a point?
Yes, I was just going to say, Malcolm, to back up what you were saying about parish basic allowance. Of the 320 councils on the patch I look after, there are less than 10 that pay a parish basic allowance. And they are the large town councils and one or two very small ones, but not all town councils actually pay the allowance. And picking up the point that Linda was asked just now, I've also been asked that question by a couple of people in Bexhill about the chairman and the mayor, and totally support what Linda has just said. It is not possible in law to do it.
Couple of other questions that have come up on the chat is Stephen Pittman. Thanks, Stephen. Do you have an anticipated number of applications for the 18 available seats? No, it really depends how many people stand. I would like to hope and to think that we'll get to hold an election in every one of the wards. If we only have one candidate in any ward, they will be elected unopposed. But I would hope that we can get enough. There's no limit. There's no legal limit. Lord Ampthill will be aware that Rye Town Council doesn't have wards, and I think it's 16 seats, and they seem to regularly get 17 people standing for them. I won't even go into the grass skirt method of counting. It's nothing to do with what the counters wear. It's to do with what the method we use. So there's no limit. And then again, Jimmy's come back with other rules for candidates as to what they can post on social media. What I would do is advise people to go to the Electoral Commission and look at that and look at that side of things. Sorry, I'm just flicking through. Viv, thanks for your question about can we assist in communicating to electors? Yes, we can actually. We can promote the election. What we can't do is obviously promote any candidates or anything like that. But what we will do is use our social media channels, etc., to promote the fact that the election is happening and encouraging people to vote. Sorry if I'm going through these. Councillor Brian Drayson, Chairman of Rother District Council. Councillor Drayson.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I just wanted to clarify something because I thought I was helping Howard with a question and he's actually confused me now, or not confused me, but the £806 plus 7p per elector, I must admit the Electoral Commission page says per parish or town council elector. I assumed it was a ward. Howard quite rightly has said, well, no, it says 7p per elector. So would one ward get 806 and 7p for every elector in Bexhill?
I will defer to Richard on that one, and whether he has a view. I would need to check, but Richard may.
Yeah, I thought you might defer to me on that one. I may have to defer to the guidance on that. It's something that I'm going to have to check. I believe it may at a district level. It would be the district. It would be the district ward. But at a parish level, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure. So I think I'll have to check this one and come back to you. I think it's the parish ward, but I'm going to have to be. I would like to give an answer if I'm not certain.
But that's not what it says.
Yeah, that's it. This is Electoral Commission guidance for you. It does like to confuse things, and where I've got two bits of conflicting information, I wouldn't want to give the wrong answer. I'll commit to a straight answer next week if that's okay.
Thank you.
And just while I've got you, Richard, Howard has asked, those standing for parties will have access to the electoral register. Will independent candidates also have that? My understanding is yes, but you will no doubt correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, they will. Yeah. When someone stands as a candidate, at the point that they become a candidate, which in most cases will be Monday the 29th of March, they are entitled to request a copy of the register for the area in which they're standing. So if someone were to stand in a particular parish ward, they can have the register for that area. There are strict limits, I should point out, on what that register can be used for. It's given for the purpose of collecting nominations. So it's officially a nominations register. It can be used to assist the campaign, but I would say this is one of those things where there's a lot of ifs and buts and caveats. But it's very important if you bear in mind that it's got people's names and addresses on it. It is only used for the purpose for which it's provided. So, but yes, independent candidates are entitled to have it.
Can I just make a point that if when you finish with your register, please don't put it in your general recycling bin when it goes out. Either shred it, or if push comes to shove, return it to us, and we will dispose of it securely. But please don't put it in your general recycling, because for the reasons that Richard has outlined, it does contain information. I think so far I've run out of questions, but I'm fully anticipating a few more, or maybe I'm going to be disappointed. I know this is not the same as being in the as being face to face. It's marginally better than doing it as a teleconference, but it's not quite the same. Andrew, did you have a question? Andrew Crotty?
Yes, hi Malcolm, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good, thanks.
It's a message for Richard. Hello?
Yeah, you're still there.
Yep, this is a message for Richard.
Hi Andrew, go ahead.
Richard. Right, basically we want to find out if I apply for the central ward, is there, because I know recently there was changes in the ward map where the boundaries are. So remember helping before that there wasn't a clear map to show you the boundaries of where the central ward begins and ends.
I think what you're talking about there is there was a boundary review. This was actually for the district ward areas, but as I say, the parish wards are matching the district wards. So the parish wards will match the district wards as they are now. So what are you asking? What the boundary is, or?
Yeah, for the central ward, because obviously when I did it before, it kind of like there was like the even side was my side, and then the odd side was somebody else's ward. There's that kind of boundary.
I'm not sure. I don't know. Perhaps if Lisa or anyone else can answer whether we have a page for the parish council that shows a map of each of the parish wards. I don't know if that's something that we have available that may show. If not, perhaps that might be something we can put onto the website so that you can see where the boundaries are. But we'll have to look into that.
That might make it clearer, because because again it's against the electoral roll if you cross over to someone else's boundary. So that was kind of more of a clearer, transparent way of seeing it for a candidate's point of view.
I think what you're referring to is for a different election, though. That's possibly for a district council election.
This was
obviously, we'll provide an electoral register which will show the list of who the electors are in the particular parish ward that you'd be standing in.
Okay, thank you.
That's all right.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to multitask, which, as you know, is impossible. Howard's asking, can we have an electronic version of the register, Richard?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There's you can have paper or electronic.
Can I just say that the same means of disposal apply to electronic as apply to paper? It must be securely disposed of when you finish with it. I'm sorry if I labour the point, but it is just reminding people that it is personal data, and it comes under GDPR, General Data Protection Regs, and we just need to be aware of that. Any other questions? Any other issues? I mean, like I said, this is not your only opportunity tonight. We are available, whether it be through, if it's a question on the town centre, or the town council, sorry, Linda, but Linda's the better person to ask, because she's got experience of town councils and how they're run. There's a lot of information available on the SALC website if you're looking for information on that. If it's on the elections, there's information available on the Electoral Commission website, or as Richard said, on our own website. But again, if you're in any doubt of any of that, just ask the question, and we will get the answer to you. Nikki, thanks, Nikki. Nikki Bishop saying some of the ward maps shown on Rother's website are out of date. We will make sure they're not out of date. They should have been updated, but I will check that, Nikki. Thanks. Sorry, that was quicker than typing it. So I'm typing the answer to you. So, and Howard saying Salisbury styles itself a city council, a lower parish. Could Bexhill become Bexhill City? I think it's got a bit of a way to go yet before it gets to that. Might need to get a cathedral, might be a starting point. That's usually a good starting point. I'd suggest put another 100,000 on the population and we might get close to it, Howard. But I think a town council is more appropriate. Trevor?
Yes, in order to become a city, Malcolm, the Queen has to breathe on you anyway. The Queen has to turn you into a city.
Right. Well, that's going to require somebody with far more influence than I have in any area to sort that one out. So that's. Any other questions? If they're not, sorry, I knew that. Yeah, fair enough, Tracy. Tracy's put the Delaware Pavilion as our cathedral. We may view it that way. I'm not sure the church sees it in quite the same light, but I wouldn't disagree with the sentiment behind it. So thank you for that. Like I said, I don't see any point prolonging things, but if there are no other questions, this isn't your only opportunity. What we wanted to do was to just give people a bit of an opportunity to ask questions, to get a brief introduction I fully anticipate people will want to go away from here tonight and think a little bit about things, and you may have more questions. Please do ask us. That's what we're here to do. Like I said, we are not here, and Rother is not here to run the town council, but what we are here to do is to make sure that the process that leads to the formation of the town council is absolutely well run and efficiently run, and that's what we will do, and we will do that with Linda's help and Trevor's help in setting it up. So can I just say thanks ever so much to all of those who've attended tonight. It would be very remiss of me, as Councillor Bayliss has put in so much effort from the start of this and led the process, if I didn't leave the finishing remarks to her. So Christine, over to you.
Thank you ever so much, Malcolm. That's it's been a great evening, and I'd like to thank all our speakers tonight: Pauline, Linda, obviously our interim town clerk, Trevor, David from Rye. We've got Richard from the elections office. It's been really informative, and we've had some really interesting questions. I know that there's 30 people watching on the YouTube channel. I've just checked. So this is this is demonstrating that there's a lot of interest, I think, from individuals who are keen to stand. And I want to encourage people from right across the political spectrum, to get involved in our town. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that as chair of the steering group, we've almost always reached a consensus on the way forward in relation to the town council. And I've got members from the Conservative group on the steering group, members from the Liberal Democrats, Independents. I'm the only Labour representative, but there's a wide political spectrum, and as I say, we've come to a consensus about the way forward. I should say last Wednesday, our chairman, Brian Draveson, signed the order. There is no turning back now. The town council, the parish council will come into effect on the 1st of April, and we will have elections in May. And I think that the time has passed now about, if we have a town council, to what sort of town council do we want? What sort of how do we want it to run? How do we want it to operate? What do we want people to do? And that's the way forward. And I get a really good vibe from tonight's meeting that the sorts of questions people are asking are all the right sort of questions. So thank you ever so much to everybody for coming. And I'm sure you've got the email addresses. If you've got further questions, please do, send those in. And if you can come to the meeting next week, I think Richard will probably be able to update on the amount per that you're allowed to spend per candidate. I somehow can't imagine that it's 7p for every person in Bexhill-on-Sea. That would be truly incredible. But as I say, you'll get the answers to all those questions. So thank you very much. And without further ado, I'll say good night and thank you.
Thank you.